My name is Isaiah Thompson. I am 69 years old. And my daughter-in-law waited exactly 3 days after my wife's funeral to make her move. Now that Serena is gone, she said, her smile like ice. "You'll sign the company over to my son. You're old, Isaiah. It's time to disappear." She thought I was a broken old man. She didn't know I was already investigating my wife's death. And she definitely didn't know what I would find on that DNA test. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know in the comments where you are watching this story from. And please hit like and subscribe if you believe that family should be about respect, not greed. The funeral was a gray, suffocating fog. I stood by the casket, my hand resting on the polished mahogany, feeling nothing but the impossible coldness of the wood. My wife, Serena, my partner for 45 years, gone. It wasn't just a loss. It was an amputation. I felt the physical space where she used to be. The air in the church was thick with lilies and quiet sobs, but all I could feel was the emptiness beside me. My whole world had been reduced to this 6-foot hole in the ground. I was a 69-year-old man, the founder of a logistics empire worth hundreds of millions, and in that moment, I was just a ghost, hollowed out and adrift. Then I looked at my family. My son Andre was a complete wreck. He was 42, but he looked like a lost child, his face pale and puffy, his eyes vacant. He was leaning so heavily on his wife Heather that she seemed to be the only thing holding him upright. And Heather, my daughter-in-law, she was perfect. Too perfect. She wore a tasteful black dress. Her makeup was flawless. She accepted condolences with a practiced somber grace. She squeezed Andre's arm, she dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, she murmured, "Thank you for coming," to the endless line of guests. But in the 2 hours I had been standing there, I hadn't seen a single genuine tear. Her eyes were not the eyes of a grieving daughter. They were the eyes of an executive scanning a room, assessing, calculating. They were sharp, and they were cold. While my son was drowning in grief, she was checking her phone tucked discreetly into her black purse. I saw the screen light up. Once, twice, 3 times. Who texts in the middle of their mother-in-law's funeral? Andre wouldn't have even noticed. He hadn't noticed much of anything since he met her. I tried to shake the thought. This was grief, I told myself. Grief makes you suspicious. It makes you see monsters in the shadows. But as the service ended, I couldn't shake the memory of Serena's last 6 months. My wife had been sick for a long time, but her decline, it was so fast, so sudden at the end. Heather, a former nurse, had insisted on taking personal leave from her job to care for Serena at home. "It's the least I can do, Cha," she'd said, calling me Cha in that sweet tone she used. "She's my mother, too. I want her to be comfortable. I can handle her medications." We were all so grateful. I was grateful. Andre was grateful. We thought it was an act of love. But I remember Serena's words just a week before she passed. She was weak, her voice a dry rattle. She grabbed my wrist. Her fingers were bony, but her grip was tight. "Zay," she whispered, her eyes wide with a fear I didn't understand. "Zay. Heather, it's wrong. Something's wrong." I had shushed her. I told her it was the medication talking. I told her Heather loved her. Now watching Heather stand over Serena's grave like a conqueror, Serena's words echoed in my head. Wrong. The last guests finally trickled away. The cemetery staff waited patiently at a distance. It was just the 3 of us. Me, my broken son, and my flawless daughter-in-law. The sun was setting, casting long, cold shadows. Heather put a hand on my arm. Her touch was firm, not comforting. "Cha," she said, her voice low and all business. "We need to talk, soon, about everything." I looked at her. "Everything about the future," she said, her gaze steady. "We need to make sure Serena's wishes are properly executed." A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the evening air. Her wishes. Serena's only wish was for her family to be happy. But Heather's voice, it didn't sound like she was talking about wishes. It sounded like she was talking about a contract. "We'll talk," I said, my voice hoarse. "But not today. Give me a few days." "Of course," she said, her smile tight. "Grieve. But we'll talk on Friday. Our house, 7 p.m. It wasn't a request. It was a summons. The next 3 days were the longest of my life. I walked through my empty house, Serena's scent still lingering on her pillow, her reading glasses still on the nightstand. I expected them to come over, to bring food, to sit with me, to share stories. They didn't. The house remained silent. On Friday, I drove to their sprawling suburban home in the gated community, the house I had paid the down payment for. I walked into my home office, the room I had set up for Andre when he joined the company, though he mostly just forwarded emails. I thought we were going to talk about Serena, about our memories, about how to move forward without her. I was a fool. Andre and Heather were sitting opposite my desk. They looked like they were conducting a corporate interview. Andre was fidgeting with a pen. Heather had a leather-bound portfolio in front of her. "Thank you for coming, Cha," Heather started. Andre didn't look at me. "This is my house, Heather," I said, my voice tired. She ignored me. "We know this is difficult. Andre is devastated." She put her hand on his and he flinched but then relaxed into her touch. "But we need to be practical. Serena is gone. And you're 69. You can't be expected to run a multi-million-dollar corporation on your own." I stared at her. "I've been running it on my own since 1978, Heather. Serena and we built it." "Exactly," she said, her voice hardening. "You built it, past tense. Now it's time to let it go. You're getting old. You've been forgetting things. You missed that meeting with the logistics union last month. You called your CFO by the wrong name." I felt a jolt of anger. The meeting was missed because Serena had a crisis that night. I called my CFO by his college nickname. She had been collecting every minor slip-up. "What are you saying, Heather?" She leaned forward. Her smile was gone. Her eyes were like chips of blue ice. "Now that the old woman is gone, there's no one left to protect you. You're confused. You're forgetting things. It's time to sign the company over to your heir." "My heir." I looked at Andre. "Andre is my heir." Heather laughed, a short, sharp, ugly sound. "No, not Andre. He's not built for it. We've decided. You'll put the company in Leo's name. Our son, your grandson." Leo was 5. "Andre and I," she continued, "will manage the trust until he comes of age. It's the only logical step to secure the Thompson legacy." "And what about me?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. She waved her hand dismissively. "You can retire. We'll give you a generous stipend. You can travel, or you can stay in your house. But the company, it's over for you. You can't handle it anymore. It's time to disappear. You'll put me on an allowance in my own company." "It's for the best," she said. "You'll sign the papers, or we will make you sign them." "Make me a competency hearing," she said, tapping the portfolio. "I've already had Andre documenting your episodes, forgetting meetings, confusion, emotional distress. A judge would see it our way. They would appoint Andre as your legal guardian. And she patted his hand, will do what's best for the family." My breath caught in my chest. This wasn't just greed. This was a coup. Planned, meticulous, and they were launching it on my wife's fresh grave. I looked at my son, the boy I taught to ride a bike, the boy I sent to the best schools, the man whose wedding I paid for, whose house I bought. "Andre," I said, just his name. He wouldn't look at me. He just stared at the polished surface of my desk. His face was pale. His hands were shaking. "Andre, look at me." He slowly, painfully lifted his head. His eyes were red. "Tell me this is a joke. Tell me your wife has lost her mind." He just stared at me, his lip trembling. "Andre." I slammed my fist on the desk. The sound echoed in the silent room. Heather flinched, but Andre just crumpled. "Please, Dad." He whispered the words, barely audible. "Please, just do what she says. It's for the peace of the family." The betrayal was so total, so complete, it left me breathless. It wasn't just Heather, it was my son. My own blood. He had chosen. He had chosen her and the money over me. I looked at them, the ambitious, cruel monster and the weak, spineless coward she controlled. I felt the grief for Serena morph into something new, something cold, something hard. It was rage, but I didn't show it. I let my shoulders slump. I let my face fall into the mask of a broken, confused old man. The mask they wanted to see. I nodded slowly. I don't know what to say. I need time to think. Heather's smile returned. Of course, Cha. Take all the time you need. Take a week. We'll have the papers drawn up by then. It's just a formality. I stood up, my legs feeling heavy. I need to go. Andre, walk your father to the door, Heather cooed, already picking up her phone, probably texting her victory. Andre walked me to the door, still refusing to meet my eyes. I put my hand on his shoulder. He tensed. You're a good son, Andre, I whispered. He finally looked at me, his eyes full of a strange mixture of shame and relief. I walked out of my own house, got into my car, and drove. I drove for an hour, the anger and the pain battling for control. They thought I was finished. They thought I was a doddering old fool they could lock away. They thought they had won. I pulled over to the side of the road. The old Isaiah, the grieving husband, was gone. The man who had clawed his way up from a single rusty flatbed truck in 1978 was back. I picked up my phone. I didn't call Andre. I didn't call Heather. I called my lawyer. Garrison, I said, my voice no longer weak but like steel. Get over to my house. Now. We have a problem. And I want the number of that private investigator you used for the union merger. The expensive one. The one who digs up bodies. Garrison arrived at my home 30 minutes later. He did not use the main entrance. He used the private study door the same way he had for 30 years. He is my lawyer, my consigliere, but more than that, he is the only man alive who knows where every dollar I have is buried. He walked in his face grim. Zay, he said, his voice low. I heard the service was difficult. I am so sorry about Serena. I waved my hand, brushing the condolences away. There was no time for that. The grief was a physical weight, but the anger was a fire. She's gone, Garrison, and they're already moving in. They're picking at the bones. He set his briefcase down, his posture stiffening. What did they do? I told him. I relayed every single word of the conversation. The demand for the company, the ultimatum, the casual, cruel threat of a competency hearing. And worst of all, the way my own son, Andre, the boy I had raised, sat there and let it happen. The way he looked at the floor and whispered, "Please, Dad, for the peace of the family." Garrison listened, his face hardening from sympathy to stone. A competency hearing, he scoffed, his voice dripping with contempt. They are arrogant fools. Your mind is sharper than both of theirs combined. We can shut that down in 5 minutes. No, I said. I stood up from my desk and walked to the window, looking out over the gardens Serena had spent decades planting. We're not shutting it down. We're not stopping them. We're letting them try. Garrison looked confused. Zay, what are you talking about? Let them file a public petition. It's madness. It will hurt the stock price. It will damage your reputation. Let it hurt the stock, I said, turning back to him. I want them out in the open. I want them to commit to their betrayal. But that's not why you're here, Garrison. That's the business problem. We have a human problem. I took a breath. Garrison, I don't think Serena died a natural death. The air in the room went still. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. Garrison, a man who had faced down corporate raiders and federal investigators with me, actually looked shocked. Zay, that is a terrible, terrible accusation. Serena was sick for a long time. Her heart was weak. It was weak? I agreed, my voice low and hard. But it wasn't that weak. Not that fast. She didn't just decline, Garrison. In the last 6 months, she fell off a cliff, and the only person holding her hand on the way down was Heather. I walked back to my desk, my mind replaying the nightmare. Think about it. Heather is a nurse, a former cardiac nurse to be precise. She insisted on taking leave to care for Serena personally. She insisted on handling all of her medications. All of them. She managed the IV drip. She gave the injections. She dismissed the private night nurse we hired, saying she wanted to do it herself, that it was her duty as a daughter. I leaned on the desk. We called it love. We called it dedication. Now, I paused, the ugly word forming in my mind. Now I call it opportunity. Garrison sat down heavily. My God, Zay, you think she... There's more, I said. I told him about Serena's last lucid words. The way she grabbed my wrist, her eyes wide with a terror I had mistaken for confusion. She whispered, "Zay, something's wrong. Heather, it's wrong." I shushed her, Garrison. I told her she was tired. I told her Heather loved her. My voice cracked for the first time. And Heather, at the funeral today. Her eyes. There was no grief. There was impatience. And today in my office she was triumphant. She was a CEO who had just closed a hostile takeover. She could not wait to get me out and get her hands on the money. Money, Garrison repeated. It's always money. But to go that far, to kill, she's fast, I said. She's ruthless, and she has made one fatal mistake. She thinks I'm a senile old man who's going to roll over and die of a broken heart. She thinks Andre is her puppet. She thinks she's the smartest person in the room. She's about to find out how wrong she is, Garrison said, his voice turning cold. He opened his briefcase. What do you need? This was it. The plan had been forming in my mind ever since Andre looked at the floor. The plan to protect my legacy. The plan to get justice for my wife. I need 3 things, Garrison, and I need them yesterday. I held up one finger. First, I want 24/7 surveillance on Heather. I want a private investigator on her so close she can smell his aftershave. I want to know where she goes, who she meets, what she buys, and who she talks to. And most of all, I want a deep dive into her finances. All of it. I want to know about every credit card, every secret loan, every gambling debt. You think she's in debt? Garrison asked, already writing. A woman that desperate for money, that willing to cross lines like this, she's hiding something big. She's drowning. Find the hole she's trying to fill with my company. I held up a second finger. Second. This one is harder. I want a DNA test on Leo. Garrison's pen stopped. He looked up, his jaw slack. Zay, he's your grandson. He's Andre's son. You can't be serious. Am I? I shot back. Look at Andre. Really look at him, Garrison. He's weak. He's been weak his entire life. He lets that woman walk all over him, poison his relationship with his mother, and now attempt to steal his father's entire legacy. He can't say no. He can't stand up for himself. He has no spine. And that child, I said, pointing to a silver-framed photo on my desk, is not weak. I've always felt it. He doesn't look like us. He doesn't act like us. There's a strength in that boy, a cunning that Andre simply does not possess. It's all her. I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a whisper. I have been paying for Andre's entire life since the day he was born. I paid for his college, I paid for his wedding, I paid for his house, but I will not hand over Serena's legacy, the company she named, to a child who might not even share a single drop of our blood. I need to know Garrison. I need the truth. Garrison looked shaken, but he nodded. He knew I wasn't just guessing. It's difficult, Zay. We need a clean sample from the boy and from Andre. It's a massive invasion of privacy. Then invade it, I said, my voice flat. The PI you're hiring, tell him to get a water bottle from the kids' preschool, a used spoon from a restaurant, a hairbrush from their house. I don't care how he does it. Get me that test. Andre will be easy. I'll invite him to lunch. He'll leave his glass on the table. Just get it done. Garrison wrote it down, his pen scratching loudly in the dead quiet room. All right, Zay. And the third thing. I took a deep breath. This was the one that hurt the most. This was the one that, if I was right, would mean my life as I knew it was over. The hospital, I said. Serena's medical records. Heather had her at home. The records will be sparse, Garrison warned. No, I said. Serena was at the hospital for observation 2 weeks before she died. They ran a full panel. They took blood. They always keep samples for 30 days. I looked him dead in the eye. I want a full independent toxicology report run on that blood sample. I want to know exactly what was in her system when she died. I pointed to an empty tea mug on my desk, one Heather had brought me last week, insisting I drink her special blend for my stress. She was a cardiac nurse, Garrison. She knows exactly what drugs can mimic a natural heart attack. She knows what doses build up over time. She knows what medication to give that an autopsy, especially one on an old sick woman, would never look for. She knows how to kill someone slowly right in front of their family and have everyone call it a tragedy. She thinks she's covered all her tracks. She thinks the only person who could possibly stop her is dead. But she forgot about me. Garrison closed his notebook. He stood up. In that moment, he wasn't my lawyer anymore. He was my friend. He was my general. She's not just trying to steal your company, Zay, he said quietly. She's trying to erase your entire life, your wife, your son, your legacy. I know, I said. And I'm going to let her keep trying. For one more week, I'm going to play the part of the senile, grieving old man she wants me to be. I'm going to let her walk right into the trap. While you play defense, I'll build the offense, Garrison said. I'll make the calls. The PI will be on her by morning. The lab order for the DNA will be expedited, and the toxicology report. I know people at the hospital. I'll get that sample. He walked to the study door. Zay, he said, turning back his hand on the knob. Be careful. You're in a house with a snake. And now you're accusing her of murder. I smiled. It was the first real smile I'd felt in months. It was cold hard and full of purpose. No, Garrison. She is in a cage with a lion. She just doesn't know it yet. I walked into the headquarters of Thompson Premier Logistics the following Monday. My company, my name on the building etched in polished granite. The lobby, usually bustling with the energy of 1,000 moving parts, fell silent as I entered. People looked at me, then quickly looked away. They saw a grieving widower. They saw the boss who had just buried his wife. They did not see a king preparing for war. Good morning, Mr. Thompson, my executive assistant mumbled, her eyes full of that awful, watery pity. Are you sure you should be here? I waved her off, forcing a slight tremor into my hand. Nonsense, Maria. Work. Work is what keeps the mind sharp. Or so I pretended. I walked into the 10 o'clock strategy meeting. My senior staff, men and women who had been with me for decades, men and women who had eaten at my table, who had watched Serena's boys grow up. They all stood when I entered. Sit, I mumbled, slumping into my chair at the head of the table. Mike, my chief financial officer, a man I had known since he was a 19-year-old intern, began the presentation on the new West Coast distribution deal. He spoke about freight tonnage and fuel cost projections. I let him talk for 5 minutes. Then I held up my hand. Robert, I said. Mike froze. The entire room froze. It's Mike Zay, he said gently, as if speaking to a child. I blinked, feigning confusion. What? Oh, of course, right. Mike. Yes. Now this contract. I picked up the multi-million-dollar document. I squinted at it. This is for the new client in Seattle. Mike looked physically pained. Zay, this is the Atlanta deal. We finalized the Seattle contract last quarter. We discussed it at length. Right, I said, rubbing my temples. So many details. My mind is... It's just so foggy since Serena... I let my voice trail off. I looked at the contract again. Are you sure this isn't the catering invoice for the funeral? It looks... complicated. Dead silence. I watched them. My most loyal team. I saw the looks they exchanged. It was a look of pure, unadulterated terror. Not for me. For the company. For their futures. The rumors were starting. I could almost hear them. Zay is losing it. He's done. He's mixing up multi-million-dollar contracts with catering invoices. The old man is finished. It had to be done. Heather's spies were everywhere in this building. I needed the narrative to be strong. I needed her to believe I was incompetent. I needed her to get comfortable. That evening they came to my house. Andre and Heather. They didn't call first. They used Andre's key. I was in my study pretending to read a financial report upside down when they just appeared at the door. Cha, Heather said. Her voice was a disgusting syrup of fake concern. You look exhausted. Andre told me what happened at the meeting today. You're pushing yourself far too hard. You shouldn't even be at the office. Andre, my son, my boy, stood behind her like a well-dressed shadow, nodding on cue. She's right, Dad. You should be resting. We can handle things at the office for a while. Handle what? I mumbled, looking up slowly. Handle the papers. I don't. Just the day-to-day, Cha, Heather said, gliding into the room. She placed her cold hand on my shoulder. Her touch felt like a spider. You just sit down. I brought you something. I know how stressed you've been. She went into my kitchen. My kitchen. Serena's kitchen. I heard the tap run. I heard the clink of a mug. I heard the kettle whistle. Andre sat in the chair across from me, looking everywhere but at my face. She's just worried, Dad. We're all worried. I know, son. I know, I said, my voice weak. She's a good wife. So good to me. The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. Heather returned. She was carrying my favorite mug, the heavy ceramic one Serena had given me 20 Christmases ago. The mug was steaming. "I made you my special herbal tea," she said, her smile wide and bright. "It's an old family recipe. It's for memory and for relaxation. You really need to relax, Cha." She handed me the mug. I looked at the dark liquid. It smelled strange, earthy, with a faint, bitter undertone beneath the scent of lavender. Was this it? Was this the next step? Was she poisoning me just as she had poisoned my wife? Or was this just another test of her control? It didn't matter. The performance was the only thing that mattered. I took the mug with a trembling hand, letting my fingers shake just enough to be convincing. "Thank you, Heather. You are so good to me. So much better than I deserve." I lifted the mug to my lips. I saw her eyes. They were locked on my mouth, waiting, expecting. I pretended to take a small sip, then coughed violently, a rattling theatrical cough. "Oh," I choked out, spilling a little on my shirt. "Oh dear, so sorry, so clumsy of me. I need a napkin." Heather sighed. I saw the flash of annoyance cross her face before she buried it under a mask of concern. "Of course, Cha. Honestly, you're a mess. I'll get one." She turned and walked back toward the kitchen. The second her back was to me, my hand was as steady as forged steel. In one swift, silent motion, I poured the entire contents of the hot mug into the large, dense soil of the potted fern Serena had kept by my armchair for a decade. The soil hissed quietly, absorbing the dark liquid in an instant. I put the empty mug back on the saucer just as she returned, dabbing a wet cloth. "Here you go," she said, wiping my chin as if I were a baby. I wiped my lips. "Ah, thank you, dear. It's very strong, but I feel warmer already." I leaned back in the chair, closing my eyes, letting my breathing go deep and slow as if exhausted. I watched her through my eyelashes. She picked up the empty mug. She looked inside it, confirming it was drained. And then I saw it. The look I had been waiting for. It wasn't just satisfaction. It was triumph. A small, tight, victorious smile played on her lips. She thought I had drunk it. She thought I was weak. She thought I was stupid. She thought the senile, broken old man was doing exactly what she wanted. She thought she had won. That's right. I thought the rage burning cold and pure in my gut. You believe the lie, Heather. You believe I'm finished. The bigger the fool you think I am, the harder you will fall. I stared at the potted fern by my armchair. The leaves, once a vibrant, healthy green, were already turning a sickly yellow-brown at the edges. Heather's specialty was potent whatever it was. I found myself wondering, with a cold sickness in my stomach, how many cups of that it had taken to weaken Serena's strong heart. How many times had I watched her drink it while Heather smiled and called her Mom? My phone buzzed, not my main phone, my private line, the one only Garrison, my lawyer, had the number to. I checked the hallway. Andre and Heather had left an hour ago, satisfied I was sure that the old man was medicated, docile, and grieving. I walked into my study, the one room in the house that was truly mine, and locked the door. I picked up the phone. "Talk to me." Garrison's voice was quiet, professional, but I could hear the electric tension in it. "Zay, the private investigator is good. He's been on her for 72 hours, and it's worse than we thought." I sat down heavily in my old leather chair, the chair Serena had bought me with my first big bonus back when we thought we were kings. "Worse how Garrison don't sugarcoat it. Just give it to me straight." "Right," Garrison said. "First, your daughter-in-law is a prolific liar. She told Andre she was going to a grief yoga session and a spa day today. And she didn't," I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Oh, she went to a spa all right," Garrison said, his voice dripping acid. "The spa and casino at the Monarch Hotel, the High Rollers Lounge Zay, the one you need a $100,000 credit line just to get into." I felt a cold knot tighten in my gut. Serena and we built an empire, but we never lived like one. We lived in the same house for 40 years. The Monarch was for fools with new money desperate to prove something. "She's a gambler," I whispered. It wasn't a question. "She's not just a gambler, Zay. She's a desperate one. The PI ran her financials. You were right. She's drowning. It's not just the $150,000 you suspected. That's just the credit cards we can see. She has private markers, Zay, to some very unsavory people. We're looking at a total debt closer to $300,000. 300,000. The number hung in the air. I did the math. That was almost the exact amount Andre had lost on that bad housing investment last year. An investment Heather had pushed for, insisted on. An investment I had quietly bailed him out of, thinking he'd just been naive. I hadn't bailed out my son. I had paid his wife's gambling debts. She's been bleeding us dry for years. I said the words flat. It gets worse, Garrison continued. She's not just gambling, she's reckless. This afternoon, after she left the casino down by the way, the PI estimates she lost another 20 grand she didn't have. She didn't go home. Where did she go? A motel, the sleepy haven off the interstate. The kind of place that rents rooms by the hour. Peeling paint, broken neon sign, the whole 9 yards. A motel, my son's wife. I felt a surge of disgust so profound it made me nauseous. Who was she meeting? A man. The PI got photos. He's middle-aged, Caucasian, drives a nondescript sedan. They were in the room for exactly 1 hour. Then she left and he left 10 minutes later. An affair, I said. It was almost a relief. An affair is simple. An affair is just a grubby, common betrayal. What I was suspecting, what I was afraid of, was so much darker. We're running his plates as we speak, Garrison said. I'll have a name for you within the hour. But Zay, the PI sent the photos. They're not pleasant. It's clearly her. She's wearing the same beige coat she wore to your house this morning when she brought you that tea. I closed my eyes. Andre, my poor, blind, stupid boy. His wife wasn't just a compulsive gambler. She was cheating on him. She was cheating on him, stealing from his father, and had likely just murdered his mother. And she had him so terrified, so twisted, so manipulated, that he was willing to help her destroy his own father to protect her. Send me the photos, Garrison, I said. Zay, are you sure you don't need to see this? Send me the photos. My voice was quiet, but it was the voice I used when I closed billion-dollar deals. It was an order. I need to see exactly who I'm fighting. I need to see the face of the man who is complicit in destroying what's left of my family. All right, Garrison sighed. They're coming to your secure email now. The name of the man will follow as soon as I have it. One more thing, Garrison, I said before he could hang up. The other 2 items, the DNA and the medicals. The PI is on it. He got the sample from the boys' preschool this afternoon, a plastic water bottle from the trash can. Andre's sample. You're having lunch with him tomorrow. Yes. He thinks he's coming to check on my mental state again, to see if I'm ready to sign the papers. Good, my man will be at the restaurant bussing tables. Just leave the water glass on the table when you leave. He'll handle the rest. The lab is standing by. We'll have the paternity results in 48 hours. And Serena? I asked, my voice dropping to a whisper, the anger fading, leaving only the cold ache. Serena's sample? There was a pause. That, Garrison said, his voice dropping. That was harder, but I have friends in low places and in high ones. They pulled her final blood sample from the hospital archives this morning. It's being couriered to a private toxicology lab in Virginia. One that doesn't ask questions, and one that can't be bought. We'll have those results by the end of the week. Good, I said. Keep digging, Garrison. I want to know everything. I hung up. I sat there in the oppressive silence of my study, the room Serena had designed, surrounded by the books she loved. The faint smell of her jasmine perfume still lingered in the curtains. I opened my encrypted laptop. The email notification pinged. Subject urgent, attachment. I clicked it. The first photo was grainy, taken from a distance. Heather, unmistakable in her expensive beige coat, walking across a filthy parking lot, her head down. The second photo, she was at a motel room door, number 10B. A man was opening it. He was mostly in shadow. The third photo, she was leaving. An hour later, she looked angry, her face tight as she adjusted her scarf. The fourth photo, the man. He was leaving 10 minutes after her. He was looking back over his shoulder, checking if anyone was watching. The PI's telephoto lens had caught him. Full face, clear as day. My world, which had been tilting for days, suddenly stopped. It wasn't the shock of the affair. I didn't care about that. It was who it was. My heart, the one Heather and Andre thought was old and weak, began to hammer against my ribs. I felt the blood drain from my face. I grabbed the edge of the desk to steady myself. No, it couldn't be. But it was. It was him. It was Dr. Evans. Dr. Robert Evans, the man who had been Serena's personal cardiologist for the last 5 years, the man who had managed her care, the man who had adjusted her prescriptions, the man who had been at our home drinking my coffee telling me how these things happen and how her heart was just too weak, the man who had signed her death certificate. Cause of death: congestive heart failure complications from chronic arrhythmia. His signature was right there on the document sitting in my desk drawer not 10 feet away from me, and here he was meeting my daughter-in-law at a cheap hourly rate motel just 3 days after he pronounced my wife dead. "Garrison," I whispered, my fingers fumbling for my phone, my hands shaking for real this time. "Garrison, pick up, pick up." He answered on the first ring. "Did you get the name?" "I don't need the name, Zay. I know the name. That's Dr. Robert Evans, Serena's cardiologist." There was a sharp, stunned intake of breath on the other end of the line. "Oh my God," Garrison whispered. "Zay, this isn't just debt. This isn't just an affair." "No," I said, my voice as cold as the grave she had just put my wife in. "This is a conspiracy. This is murder." The call came on a Thursday morning. It was Maria, my executive assistant for the last 20 years. Her voice was shaking. "Mr. Thompson, sir, I don't know how to say this, but there's an emergency shareholders meeting in the main boardroom in 10 minutes. I felt the cold grip of the trap closing. "An emergency meeting," I said, letting my voice sound old and frail, confused. "What emergency, Maria? I didn't authorize any meeting." "I know, sir," she whispered. "Mr. Andre and Mrs. Thompson. They used their shareholder status to call it. They said it was a corporate crisis. Sir, everyone is already in there. The VPs, the minority shareholders, everyone." "Thank you, Maria," I said, and hung up. I stood up slowly. This was it. This was the move. Heather was done waiting. I walked down the long corridor that Serena had decorated with artwork from local Atlanta artists. Every step echoed on the polished floor. I didn't straighten my tie. I didn't square my shoulders. I walked like a 69-year-old man who had just buried his wife and was now walking into an ambush. I let my feet shuffle. I let my shoulders slump. The performance had to be perfect. When I pushed open the heavy oak doors, the silence was immediate and absolute. The boardroom was full. All 20 seats. My entire senior staff. The 4 minority shareholders I had brought in during the 90s. And at the head of the table, sitting in my chair, the tall leather one Serena had given me when we hit 100 million, sat Heather. She was dressed in a sharp gray power suit. Beside her, looking pale, sick, and terrified, sat my son Andre. "Isaiah," Heather said. She didn't call me Cha. The pretense was over. "Thank you for joining us. Please take a seat." She gestured to an empty chair on the side. I shuffled in, pretending to be bewildered. "Heather, Andre." "What is this? Maria said it was an emergency." Heather smiled. That smile, all teeth and no warmth. "It is Isaiah, a leadership emergency. Thank you all for coming on such short notice." She stood up, radiating confidence. "As you all know, we have just suffered a terrible loss. Serena Thompson was the heart of this company, and her passing has left a void." She paused, letting the fake sympathy hang in the air. I looked at the faces around the table. My team. Mike, my CFO. Sarah, my head of logistics. They wouldn't meet my eyes. They had been cornered. Heather continued. "And in the wake of this tragedy, we must be practical. We must protect the legacy that Isaiah and Serena built. A legacy that is now at risk." I acted shocked. "At risk? What are you talking about? Our numbers are the best they've ever been." "The numbers are not the problem, Isaiah," she said, her voice dripping with that poisonous manufactured pity. "The problem is you." A collective gasp sucked the air from the room. "We love you, Isaiah," she said, placing a hand over her heart. "But you are not well." She clicked a remote. The large screen behind her, the one I used for projecting global freight routes, lit up. "Exhibit A," she said. My face appeared. It was security footage from the lobby taken 2 days ago. I was standing there looking lost as I pretended to Maria. I looked confused. I looked old. "You were missing for 20 minutes, Heather said. Right here in your own lobby. You told Maria you were looking for the men's room, the one you've used every day for 30 years. She clicked again. Exhibit B, the Atlanta deal. An audio file played. It was my voice from the meeting I had staged. Voice of Isaiah. Robert, this contract, is this for the caterer? For the funeral? Voice of Mike CFO. Zay? It's Mike. And no, this is the new distribution contract. For Atlanta, it's worth $9 million. The shareholders looked horrified. Mike in the room sank lower in his chair, his face red. He confused a $9 million logistics contract with a catering bill. Heather announced, her voice filled with grave concern. He is forgetting names. He is confusing critical documents. He is hallucinating. I was grieving, I stammered, playing my part. I was tired. It was a mistake. It's not a mistake, Isaiah, she snapped, her voice sharp. It is a pattern. It is mental decline. The grief has accelerated what was already happening. You are compromised, you are erratic, and you are a danger to this company. She let the words hang. She was good. I had to give her that. She had taken every single breadcrumb of confusion I had deliberately dropped, every piece of my grieving old man performance, and she had baked a poisoned cake with it. This company, she said, cannot and will not be driven into the ground by a man who is not mentally competent to lead it. Therefore, on behalf of my husband, Isaiah Thompson, who holds 20% of the voting shares, I am calling for an immediate vote of no confidence. We are moving to have Isaiah Thompson removed as CEO effective immediately. This was it. The coup. I looked around the room. The shareholders were panicked. My VPs looked betrayed. They all believed her. Why wouldn't they? They had seen the evidence with their own eyes. Then Heather delivered the final blow. She turned to my son. Andre, as his only son, as the future of this company, please tell them. Andre stood up. He was shaking. His hands, gripping a piece of paper, were white at the knuckles. He did not look at me. He looked at the paper. He began to read the script she had written for him. My father is not the man he was. His voice was a reedy whisper. He is confused. He's ill. He needs help. He needs rest. He doesn't belong here anymore. He looked up, his eyes swimming with tears, but not at me, at Heather. I support this motion, for the good of the company, and for his own health. My son, my own son, reading his lines, declaring his own father insane in front of the empire I had built for him. The betrayal was so complete, so absolute, it was almost beautiful in its awfulness. I felt the last shred of my old self, the loving father, die in that chair. All that was left was the king. All eyes turned to me. They expected me to yell, to fight, to break down. I did something else. I let my face crumple. I put my head in my hands and let out a sound. A dry, shuddering sob. I don't know what to say, I whispered, my voice thick with acted devastation. My own son. I looked up, my eyes filled with the fake tears I had been practicing. I looked at Andre. Andre, after everything, after your mother. Andre looked like he was going to be physically sick. He couldn't hold my gaze. He sat down heavily. I looked at the board, at Mike, at Sarah. I see. I gathered myself, the picture of a proud man utterly broken. You are right. I am tired. I am so tired. Heather's face was a mask of victory. She had done it. She had won. I will not fight this, I said quietly. The room let out a collective breath. If my own son believes this, then it must be true. I am not well. Isaiah, Mike started, his voice full of pity. I held up my trembling hand. Please, I will not fight. I only ask for one thing. Heather tensed. She didn't like this, but she was trapped by her own performance. She had to be the caring daughter-in-law. What is it, Cha? 1 week, I whispered. Just 1 week. Don't vote now. Don't humiliate me like this. Give me 1 week to prepare a statement, a final statement. We will hold the official board vote then. I will announce my retirement. I just need 1 week to say goodbye to my wife's legacy, It was the perfect move. The shareholders, seeing a broken old man, nodded in sympathy. It was the least they could do. Heather looked furious. She wanted the kill now. But she was outmaneuvered. She looked at the faces of the shareholders and she knew she had to agree. "Of course," she said, her voice tight with forced sweetness. "1 week. We will finalize the transition. Then." I nodded, not looking at her. I looked broken. I pushed my chair back, my movements slow and pained. I shuffled out of the boardroom. I didn't look back. I heard the sympathetic whispers as the door clicked shut behind me. I walked down the corridor. Once I turned the corner out of sight of the boardroom, I stopped. The stoop was gone. The tremor in my hands vanished. I stood up straight. I pulled out my private phone and dialed Garrison. "It's done," I said, my voice like ice. She took the bait. The hook, the line, and the sinker. Garrison's voice was tense. "How much time do we have?" "1 week," I said. She gave me 1 week. "It's not enough time for the full tox report from Virginia," he said. "I don't care," I said, walking towards the elevator. "But it's more than enough time for the DNA results. Call the lab. Tell them I'll pay double. I want that paternity test on my desk by Monday." 1 week. She thought she was giving me 1 week to grieve. I was giving her 1 week to live as a free woman. My son's words hit the room like a physical blow. He doesn't belong here anymore. The silence that followed was absolute. 20 executives, men and women I had hired, whose children's college tuitions I had paid for, stared at their polished desks. No one would look at me. No one would look at Andre. They were all just waiting for the old lion to either roar or to die. Heather was watching me, her face a perfect mask of triumph. She had done it. She had turned my own son against me in public. I felt the rage rise a white-hot furnace in my chest. I wanted to stand up, to overturn the table, to grab Andre by his $1,000 suit and shake him until his teeth rattled. I wanted to scream at Heather that I knew about her gambling, her debts, her motel rooms, but I did none of that. Instead, I let the rage drain away and I pulled up the only emotion that mattered in that moment. The one thing they expected from me, pure, bottomless grief. I let my shoulders slump. I slowly raised my head, not looking at Heather, not looking at the board. I looked only at my son, Andre. He was still standing, shaking his script crumpled in his fist. "Andre," I whispered. My voice was a dry, cracked thing. It sounded pathetic. It sounded perfect. "Andre, even you." He couldn't hold my gaze. He looked away, his face pale, his eyes swimming in the shame he so richly deserved. "I never thought—" I let my voice break. I put my head in my hands, rubbing my temples, my fingers trembling. My own son, my boy. I let out a sound. It was a dry, shuddering sob. The sound of a man who had lost his wife and was now in the same moment losing his son. The pity in the room was so thick I could taste it. I heard Mike, my CFO, clear his throat uncomfortably. I heard Sarah, my head of logistics, let out a tiny, sharp sigh. They weren't seeing a CEO being overthrown. They were seeing a father being executed by his child. Heather the snake saw her opening. "Isaiah, please," she said, her voice dripping with that false, sickening sweetness. "We are doing this for you. You're not well. You're grieving. You're confused. This is an act of love." "Love," I repeated. I looked up and I made sure my eyes were wet. I looked around the table at my team, these people who had known me for 30 years. "You see this, my loving family." I turned my broken gaze back to Andre. "He's right," I said to the room, my voice a broken mumble. "My son. He's right." Heather's eyes widened. She had not expected me to surrender this fast. She was expecting a fight, a roar. She wasn't prepared for a collapse. "I am tired," I said, letting my gaze fall to the table. "I am so tired. My Serena, she's gone. And now, this." I took a deep, shuddering breath. "You are right, all of you. Look at me." I held up my hands, letting them shake. "I can't even read the contracts anymore. Robert, Mike, Atlanta, it's all just noise." I looked at Heather. "You win." "This isn't about winning, Cha," she said, but her smile was so bright, so victorious, it lit up the room. "I will not fight this," I said quietly. The room let out a collective relieved breath. "I won't. If my own son believes this, then it must be true. I am not well." Mike started to say something. Isaiah, maybe just a leave of absence. I held up my hand, the trembling old man. Please, Mike. It's done. I looked at Heather. Her face was pure, unadulterated triumph. She had me. She had the company. She had it all. I will not fight, I repeated. I only ask for one thing. Heather's eyes narrowed. She tensed. The triumphant smile faltered. She didn't like this. She didn't like complications. But she was trapped by her own performance. She had to be the loving, caring daughter-in-law. What is it, Cha? She asked, her voice tight. 1 week, I whispered. Just 1 week. Don't vote now. I looked around at the shareholders, pleading. Please, don't humiliate me. Don't put removed for incompetence in the company history, not while Serena's flowers are still fresh on her grave. I saw Sarah wince. I had them. Give me 1 week, I begged. Let me prepare a statement, a final statement. We will hold the official board vote then, next Friday. I will announce my retirement. I will endorse Andre. I just need 1 week to say goodbye to my wife's legacy, please. It was a masterpiece. I was a broken old man pleading for his dignity. How could they refuse? The shareholders nodded immediately. Of course, Zay, one of them said. It's the least we can do. Heather was furious. I could see the muscle jumping in her jaw. She wanted the kill now. She wanted my signature now. She didn't want to give me 1 week. But she was outmaneuvered. She looked at the sympathetic, pitying faces of the board members, and she knew she had to agree. She forced her smile back on. Of course, Cha, she said, her voice strained. 1 week. It's a wonderful idea, a proper send-off. We will finalize the transition then. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you all. I pushed my chair back, my movements slow, pained. I felt like I was 100 years old. I used the table to pull myself up. I didn't look at Andre. I couldn't. I just shuffled defeated toward the door. I didn't look back. I heard the chair scrape as Heather, the new queen, retook my seat at the head of the table. I heard her voice all business now. All right, everyone. Now that that's settled, let's discuss the transition plan. The heavy oak door clicked shut behind me, muffling her voice. I stood in the corridor for a long moment. Then I walked around the corner out of sight of the boardroom, away from the security cameras, and I stopped. The stoop was gone. The tremor in my hands vanished. The grief on my face was replaced by a mask of cold, hard granite. I stood up straight, my back as strong as the steel I used to haul. I pulled out my private, encrypted phone. I hit the single number on my speed dial. Garrison. He answered on the first ring. How did it go? She took it. I said, my voice no longer the whisper of an old man, but the flat, cold command of a general, the hook, the line, and the sinker. Garrison let out a breath. How much time do we have? 1 week, I said, walking toward the private elevator to my penthouse office. She thinks she's giving me a week to prepare my surrender. I'm giving her 1 week to live as a free woman. It's not enough time for the full toxicology report from Virginia, he said, his voice worried. I don't care, I snapped. We have the photos, we have the gambling debts, but what I need by Monday is the DNA. Zay, the lab said. I don't care what the lab said, I interrupted, stepping into the elevator. Call them. Tell them I'll pay double. Tell them I'll buy the lab. I want those paternity results on my desk by Monday morning, sealed. All right, and the final meeting. I smiled. A cold, thin smile that held no humor at all. Oh, she's already planned it. Next Friday. She thinks it's her coronation. The elevator doors slid shut. And Garrison, I said into the phone, make sure everyone is at that meeting, the entire board, my VPs, and call Heather's parents. Tell them Isaiah Thompson is personally inviting them to celebrate their daughter's new role as head of the company. I want them to have a front row seat for the show. The call came at 11 p.m. I had been sitting in my study for hours in the dark, watching the headlights of distant cars sweep across the walls. I was playing the part of the broken man, but the truth was, I wasn't grieving anymore. I was waiting. My private phone, the one only Garrison knew about, buzzed on the desk. I picked it up on the first ring. I'm coming over. Garrison's voice was tight, strained. Don't use the front door. I have it. He hung up. He didn't need to say what it was. This was the one. The report from the lab in Virginia. The report that would tell me if I was a paranoid old man or if my wife had been murdered. I walked to the side study door, the one that opened onto the dark garden path Serena had loved so much. I unlocked it. 10 minutes later, I saw his shadow. Garrison looked terrible. He wasn't just tired, he was shaken, haunted. This was a man who had navigated billion-dollar hostile takeovers with me, a man who had faced down federal investigators without blinking. Now he looked like he had seen a ghost. He didn't say hello. He just walked past me into the dim light of my study and placed a thick sealed manila envelope on my polished desk. The sound was flat final. "From Virginia Zay," he said. "They processed it as a priority one. The lab director owed me a favor." I stared at the envelope. It was just a piece of paper, but it felt like a bomb. If I opened it, there was no going back. If I opened it, the woman my son loved, the mother of the boy I thought was my grandson, might be a killer. If I didn't open it, I would be betraying Serena's memory forever. My hands, the ones I had forced to tremble in front of Heather, were shaking for real now. "Zay," Garrison said, his voice soft but firm. "You have to look. We need to know." I nodded. I took the heavy brass letter opener from my desk, the one Serena had given me. I slid the blade under the seal. The sound of the paper tearing was the only noise in the universe. It sounded like a scream. I pulled out the pages. They were covered in medical jargon, chemical symbols, percentages, and numbers. My eyes blurred. It was meaningless. "Garrison, I'm not a scientist. What am I looking at? Just tell me." Garrison leaned over the desk, his face illuminated by my small desk lamp. He flipped past the first 2 pages. "Here," he said, his finger tapping the paper. "Page 3, Section 5, Cardiac Glycosides." I read the word. Digoxin. I knew the name. It was a heart medication, a powerful one. My mind flashed back to a conversation with Dr. Evans. Serena had a weak heart, yes, but she wasn't on digoxin, I whispered, looking at Garrison. Evans had her on a beta blocker and an ACE inhibitor. I remember the names. I picked up the prescriptions myself. It was never digoxin. "She wasn't prescribed it, Zay," Garrison said, his voice flat dead. "That's the point. Now, look at the levels." I followed his finger to a number at the end of the line. 5.2 nanograms per milliliter. I looked up confused. "What does that mean, Garrison? What does that number mean?" Garrison closed his eyes for a second as if bracing himself. "It means," he said, his voice like gravel, "that the normal therapeutic level for a heart patient is between 0.8 and 2.0. Doctors start getting nervous if it hits 2.5. Anything over 3 is considered highly toxic. Anything over 4 is catastrophic. A kill dose." He paused, and then he said the words that would change my life forever. "She had 5.2 in her system, Zay. 5 times the safe limit." The room tilted. I grabbed the edge of the desk. 5 times. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a mistake. It was a flood. It wouldn't have been instant. Garrison continued, his voice quiet, like a surgeon describing an operation. "It would have been slow, gradual, nausea, confusion, dizziness, blurred vision, weakness." My blood ran cold. "All the things," I whispered, the horror rising in my throat, "all the things we thought were just, the illness getting worse. All the things Heather kept reporting to us." I could hear her voice in my head. "Oh, Serena's having a bad day. She's so confused she doesn't know where she is. She's so nauseous, poor thing, I'll give her something for it. She's just so weak, Zay. I think it's near the end." "She wasn't declining," I said, my voice shaking with a rage so profound it was almost silent. "She wasn't confused. She was being poisoned. Right in front of me. In my own house." "And who," Garrison added, his voice like ice, "was the only person administering her medications. The only one with the medical knowledge to use a drug like digoxin, a drug that perfectly mimics the symptoms of natural heart failure in an already sick patient." "Heather," I whispered. "She was a cardiac nurse, she told me, at the university hospital back when she still worked. She would know. She would know the drug. She would know the dosage. She would know exactly how much to give and how often to make it look like her heart just gave out. An old sick woman. Who would ever question it?" I looked at the picture of Serena on my desk. She was smiling at me, vibrant and alive from that trip we took to Italy, the one before Andre even met Heather. Her eyes were so full of life. I slowly, carefully folded the report. My hands were perfectly steady now. The grief was gone. The confusion was gone. All that was left was a cold, pure, diamond-hard certainty. "Garrison," I said, my voice quiet but lethal. "You said the DNA results are coming on Monday." "Yes, Zay." The lab confirmed. "Good." I placed the toxicology report in my personal safe and spun the dial. "Because this isn't a competency hearing anymore. This isn't a corporate takeover." I locked the safe, the heavy thud of the bolt echoing in the room. I turned to my friend. "This is murder." It's Monday, the day after the toxicology report, the day after I confirmed my wife was murdered. I spent the morning at lunch with Andre. It was the most disgusting meal of my life. I sat there playing the part of the confused, grieving father. I accidentally spilled water. I forgot his wife's name. I let my hand shake as I sipped my iced tea. And Andre, he watched me. He watched me like a hawk, nodding his face, a mask of false sympathy, barely able to hide his impatience. He thinks I'm finished. He thinks I'm a fruit ripe for the plucking. I left the restaurant, leaving my water glass and my napkin on the table. Andre paid the bill like a big man, and I watched in the rearview mirror as Garrison's man dressed as a busboy cleared the table. Now I am in my study, waiting. The silence is unbearable. Every tick of the grandfather clock in the hall feels like a hammer blow. I stare at the picture on my desk. Me, Serena, Andre, and the boy Leo. At his 5th birthday party. We look happy. We look like a family. What a magnificent, poisonous lie. Garrison enters without knocking. He doesn't look haunted, not like last night. He looks grim. His face is set as if he's preparing for a funeral. He is holding a single, standard-sized, clinical-looking envelope. "The lab just sent the courier," he says. His voice is flat. I look at the envelope. It's so thin. The toxicology report was thick, full of pages, full of data. This is just one sheet of paper. One sheet that will either confirm my last hope or sever my final tie to the man I raised. "They got both samples." I ask, my voice a dry rasp. "They did," Garrison says. "The water glass from the restaurant was clean. The plastic bottle from the boys' preschool was clean. They expedited the comparison just as you asked. The results are in that envelope." I stare at it. This is harder than the toxicology report. Last night, that report confirmed my suspicions. It gave my rage a target. But this envelope could erase my son. I think of Andre, my weak, foolish, spineless son. The one redeeming human quality I thought he had left was his fierce, almost pathetic love for that little boy. He adores him. I've seen him on his hands and knees playing with trucks. I've seen him hold Leo on his shoulders, his face full of a pride I've never seen him show for anything else. He's not just a puppet, I realize. He's a deluded puppet. He's betraying his father. He's betraying his mother's memory. And he's doing it all he believes to protect his own son's inheritance. He thinks he's fighting for his child. The depth of Heather's betrayal, the sheer demonic calculation of it takes my breath away. She hasn't just manipulated him with sex and ambition. She has built his entire world, his one source of pride, on a foundation of pure sand. She gave him a fake son to secure a real fortune. My hands are shaking. This time it's not an act. I can't touch the envelope. "Open it, Garrison," I whisper. I don't think I can." Garrison, my friend, my rock, doesn't hesitate. He takes the heavy brass letter opener from my desk, the one Serena gave me. He slits the envelope. The sound is sharp, violent in the quiet room. He pulls out the single sheet of paper. I watch his face. Garrison has the best poker face in the state of Georgia. I have seen him stare down federal judges and corporate raiders without so much as blinking, but I know his tells. I see the tiny muscle in his jaw clench just once. I see his eyes just for a fraction of a second widen, not in shock, in disgust. He closes his eyes. He takes a deep, slow breath. Then he looks up at me. His face is full of a pain that mirrors my own. "Zay," he starts, his voice gentle. "Just read the damn paper, Garrison." I snap. He nods. He looks down at the paper. His voice is flat, clinical. "Paternity analysis report. Case file 44B91. Subject A, Andre Thompson. Subject B, Leo Thompson." He pauses. He looks at the bottom line. I can see it even upside down. A long line of technical data, And then at the end, 2 words. Garrison reads them aloud. Probability of paternity 0%. The words just hang in the air. 0%. It's not unlikely, it's not inconclusive. It is 0. I feel nothing. A strange, cold, terrifying calm. The grief for Serena, the rage at Andre, the shock of the murder. It all just compresses, pulling inward until it becomes a single, hard, perfect point of ice in the center of my chest. All of it. A lie. I remember Andre in the hospital the day Leo was born. He was crying, holding that tiny baby. He looked at me, his face glowing. "Look, Dad," he said. "A Thompson. Another Thompson man. My son." The pride, the joy. It was all a farce. A grotesque, humiliating farce. "Who?" I whisper. The word is barely a breath. "Does it matter?" Garrison asks quietly. "It matters," I say. "Who is the father?" "We don't know," Garrison says. "The test only compares Andre to the boy. It doesn't identify the real father." Zay, my God, she passed another man's child off as Andre's, as yours, as the heir to the Thompson fortune. I start to laugh. It's a horrible sound, a dry, rasping bark that echoes in the study. "She didn't just murder my wife, Garrison." I say, the laughter turning into something else, something terrifying. "She murdered my son. She murdered my bloodline. She stole everything. Andre, my foolish, pathetic boy. He isn't just a traitor. He's the biggest fool in this entire story. He's not an accomplice. He's the mark. He's the victim. He is betraying his father. He is desecrating his mother's memory. All for a child that isn't his. All for a woman who was playing him and her lover and me all at the same time." The coldness in my chest solidifies. It is no longer ice. It is steel. My rage is gone. My grief is gone. All that is left is the CEO, the man who builds, and the man who destroys. "Garrison," I say. My voice is perfectly calm. He looks at me worried. "Zay, that meeting, next Friday, is it confirmed?" "Yes. The whole board, all VPs, everyone. They're all expecting your retirement speech." "Good." I walk to my large desk calendar. I look at the date, Friday, the 13th. How appropriate. "I want you to add some names to the invitation list," I say, pulling out a pen. "Who?" "I want Heather's parents there. Fly them in, first class. Their flight, their hotel, their car service, all on the company dime. Tell them it's to celebrate their daughter's new role as head of the Thompson Empire. I want them front and center." Garrison smiles, a thin, grim smile. "Consider it done. They'll be there." "Good. I want Dr. Evans there." Garrison's smile vanishes. "What, Zay? No. We can't tip our hand. He's a murderer. We give him to the police." "Oh, we will," I say. "But not yet. I want him in that room. Tell him it's a private medical consultation, that the senile old man wants to discuss changing his medical power of attorney to his new doctor. Tell him there's a $10,000 bonus involved for his discretion. He's greedy. He'll come." "Zay, this is getting theatrical. It's dangerous." "It's not theatrical," I snap. "It's justice. It's the only thing Serena has left. They humiliated me in that boardroom. They called me insane in front of my own team. Now, I am going to rip their lives apart in that exact same room in front of everyone they tried to impress." I look at the clock on the wall. 3 p.m. "One last call, Garrison. After you invite her parents and her lover." "Who?" "The Atlanta Police Department, the Homicide Division. Tell them you have a sealed package of evidence in a first-degree murder case. Tell them you have a toxicology report, financial records, and surveillance photos. Tell them to have 2 of their best detectives in the lobby of my building, not the boardroom, the lobby, at 3:15 p.m. sharp next Friday. Tell them to wait for your call. Tell them when you call they'll be coming up to arrest a killer." Garrison nods, his eyes gleaming. He understands. "She's arrogant," I say. "She's triumphant. She thinks she's won. And when I show her that DNA test, when I show her she did it all for nothing, she's going to break, and I'm going to be there to watch it." I walk back to the window, looking out over the city I built. She took my wife. She took my son. She tried to take my company. Next Friday, Garrison, I am taking everything back. It is Friday, 3 p.m., the day of my execution, or as Heather believes, the day of her coronation. The main boardroom at Thompson Premier Logistics is packed so tightly that extra chairs have been brought in. The air is thick, electric, heavy with anticipation. My entire senior staff is here. Mike, my CFO. Sarah, my head of logistics. They are all sitting along the massive mahogany table, their faces grim, avoiding eye contact. They look like they are attending a second funeral. And then there is the Rogues Gallery. In the front row, seated like royalty, are Heather's parents. I flew them in first class just as I promised. They look exactly as I imagined. Smug, entitled, radiating a quiet, dismissive arrogance. They are here to watch their daughter claim her prize. Beside them sits Dr. Robert Evans, my wife's killer. He looks slightly nervous, out of place, but he's here. The $10,000 bonus for his discretion was a lure he couldn't resist. He thinks he's here to sign a simple document, collect his money, and leave. He has no idea he is a guest of honor at his own destruction. And finally, at the head of the table in the seats of power sit Andre and Heather. My son is a pale, sweating mess. He adjusts his tie every 30 seconds. He won't look at the door. He won't look at anyone. He just stares at the blank screen in front of him. But Heather is magnificent. She is a queen. She is dressed in a stark white suit, a deliberate symbolic choice. She is triumphant. Her smile is radiant. She greets board members. She pours a glass of water for Andre. Her every movement is one of complete, total, and absolute control. She has won. She knows it, and she wants everyone to see it. The door at the back of the boardroom opens. I enter. The room falls dead silent. I am playing my part. I am not Isaiah Thompson, the CEO. I am Zay, the broken old man. I am leaning heavily on a carved wooden cane, the one Serena bought me years ago as a joke, telling me I'd need it one day. My hands are trembling. My shoulders are slumped. I let my feet shuffle on the thick carpet. I look old. I look confused. I look utterly, completely defeated. I shuffle slowly toward the head of the table. Andre flinches as I get close, but he does not look up. "Thank you," I whisper. My voice is a dry, frail rasp. "Thank you all for coming." I grip the back of my chair as if just standing is a monumental effort. I know this has been a difficult week, for all of us. After Serena, I let my voice crack. I pause. I take a deep, shuddering breath. I can feel the pity in the room. It's so thick I could drown in it. My health, I continue, my voice shaking. As my family has rightly pointed out, my health is not good. I look at Andre, a look of a broken father. My son, he was right. I am tired. Heather decides she has let this pathetic display go on long enough. She stands up. She puts a hand on my arm, a gesture of patronizing false comfort. Her smile is bright, blinding. "Cha, please," she says, her voice loud and clear for the entire room to hear. "Let me. You shouldn't have to strain yourself." She turns to the board. She is in command now. This is her room. "Thank you all for being here," she says, her voice ringing with confidence. "As you know, my father-in-law Isaiah has been through an unimaginable loss, and it has accelerated his condition." She looks at me, her eyes full of that perfect, practiced, poisonous sympathy. He is a great man, a legend, and that is why this is so hard. But we as his family must do what is right for him and for the company he and Serena built. She clicks a remote. The giant screen at the end of the room, the one I had used for my performance last week, remains blank. This time she doesn't need fake evidence. She has my surrender. My father-in-law, she continues, her voice smooth as silk, has come to a brave and necessary decision. After much discussion with the family, he has decided that it is time to step down. It is time to retire. A wave of respectful, quiet applause murmurs through the room. They are all relieved. The crazy old man is going quietly. The company is safe. I just stand there, head bowed, leaning on my cane. The perfect picture of a defeated king. Heather smiles, soaking in the moment. She is not done. "And," she says, raising her voice, "he has also made a decision about the future of Thompson Premier Logistics. He has decided to pass the torch to secure the legacy. He has decided to transfer his controlling shares and the role of CEO to his only heir, to his grandson, my son, Leo Thompson. More murmurs. This is fast, but logical. The old king abdicates. The young prince, though only 5, is named successor. Of course, she adds with a little self-deprecating laugh, a 5-year-old cannot run a company of this size. So as Leo's legal guardians, my husband Andre and I will act as co-regents. We will be the interim co-CEOs managing the trust and steering this great company into the future just as Isaiah and Serena would have wanted. She puts her arm around Andre's shoulder. He looks up dazed like a man in a dream. Her parents in the front row are beaming. They are now the parents of the acting CEO of a $100 million corporation. Heather looks at me, her smile a mixture of pity and pure unfiltered triumph. She did it. She killed the wife. She neutered the son. She dethroned the king. It is her perfect moment. Isaiah, she says, her voice soft, would you like to say a few words before we sign the papers? This is it, the moment she's been waiting for. My final humiliation, my public surrender. I look up. I take a deep, rattling breath. I grip my cane. I look at Heather. I look at Andre. I look at the board. Yes, I whisper. I would. But before I sign anything, before I say goodbye, there is one last piece of business. Heather's smile tightens. She does not like this. Business, Zay, I think we've covered. No, I say, my voice a little stronger. My lawyer, Mr. Garrison, he has a final report, a clarification, for the board, before I go. I nod to the back of the room. Garrison, are you ready? Heather whips her head around. She did not know Garrison was invited. The main boardroom doors swing open, and Garrison walks in. He is not alone. He is flanked by 2 of his sharpest junior partners. They are not carrying briefcases. They are rolling in carts piled high with thick-bound documents and a projector. Heather's face for the first time shows a flicker of confusion, a tiny crack in the perfect mask. Garrison, she says, her voice losing its sweetness. What is the meaning of this? This meeting is a formality. Garrison walks to the front, sets up the projector, and looks at me. I give him a slow, almost imperceptible nod. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, Garrison says, his voice booming into the silent room, Mr. Thompson has indeed decided to restructure his estate. But before that, he asked me to present a final audit of company and family assets. He looks directly at Heather, and we have found some discrepancies. I leaned back, letting the feigned tremors in my hands subside. Heather was beaming. Her parents sitting in the front row looked like they had just won the lottery. My son Andre looked like he was about to be sick. I nodded slowly, playing the part of the defeated king. Yes, I whispered, my voice a dry rasp. The papers. Of course. Just one last formality. Heather's smile tightened just a fraction. She did not like this. It was not in her script. A formality, cha. Yes, I said, looking at the board members, the men and women I had known for 30 years. Before I sign over my life's work, my lawyer, Mr. Garrison, insisted on reading an audit, just to make sure all the numbers are clean. For the board, you understand. A final piece of housekeeping. Heather was trapped. She could not refuse a reasonable request in front of the shareholders. She forced a bright, tight smile. Of course, if we must, Garrison. I nodded to the back of the room. Garrison, are you ready? The heavy oak doors swung open. Garrison walked in. He was not alone. He was flanked by 2 sharp-looking junior associates. They were not carrying briefcases. They were rolling heavy-duty document carts, the kind used for litigation, piled high with thick, red-stamped binders. They moved with a silent, swift efficiency, setting up a projector and a laptop. Heather's face flickered. The confidence wavered. This was not part of her plan. Garrison, what is all this? She asked, her voice losing its sweetness. This meeting is a simple formality. Garrison ignored her completely. He plugged in the laptop. The massive screen behind Heather and Andre, the one she had intended for her victory speech, lit up. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Garrison's voice boomed sharp and cold, cutting through the polite silence. Mr. Thompson asked me to conduct a final audit of all family-related corporate expenditures and potential liabilities. We have found several alarming discrepancies. He clicked the remote. The screen filled with a logo. The Monarch Hotel and Casino. First, Garrison said, "We have an unsecured debt liability of $150,000. This debt is traced to several high-interest credit lines." Heather scoffed, though her face had gone pale. "This is ridiculous. What does this have to do with this company? This debt?" Garrison continued, his voice like ice, "is tied to these specific expenditures." He clicked again. The screen filled with casino logos, the Monarch, the Atlantis Resort, Caesar's Palace, Las Vegas. All charges were made in the high roller lounges. All charges were made by you, Mrs. Thompson. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. Andre, who had been staring at his hands, whipped his head up. "What? That is a lie?" Heather shouted, standing up. "That is slander?" "Is it slander, Mrs. Thompson?" Garrison asked. He clicked again. A grainy, high-resolution surveillance photo filled the screen. It was Heather. She was at a high-stakes blackjack table, her face tight with anxiety, pushing a massive stack of chips forward. The timestamp in the corner read 2:15 a.m. The date was the night before Serena's funeral. Andre made a small, strangled sound. "Heather, what is that?" Her parents in the front row looked horrified. "Honey," her mother whispered, "it's a doctored photo." Heather shrieked, her composure shattering. "This is an invasion of privacy. This old fool is making it up." "Are we?" Garrison asked, his voice deathly quiet. $150,000 in gambling debts. A motive, perhaps? A motive to secure a multi-million-dollar corporation by any means necessary. But that, Garrison said, raising his voice, is just the debt. Let's talk about corporate sabotage. He clicked again. A new slide appeared. It was a digital invoice. "An invoice for $20,000, Garrison announced. Paid from an anonymous offshore account. The recipient, a financial blogger known as Market Insider. The memo line on the payment, Thompson Health Report." Heather looked confused, her mind racing. "What is that? That has nothing to do with me." "Are you sure?" Garrison asked, pacing slowly. "Because this blogger is the one who published the inside scoop last week. The rumor that Isaiah Thompson was suffering from advanced dementia. The rumor that sent our stock price dipping 2 points. The rumor that you, Mrs. Thompson, used as Exhibit B in your emergency petition to call this very meeting." He let the words hang. He let everyone connect the dots. "We traced the offshore account," Garrison said, turning to face her. "It was opened 2 months ago. The funds were transferred from a casino credit line at the Monarch Hotel. The exact same credit line we just discussed." The trap had snapped shut. Heather was trembling, her face a mask of white-hot rage. She looked cornered. Her parents were staring at her, their faces ashen. Andre just looked broken. "I don't know what you are talking about," she finally screamed. Her voice was high and shrill, all its polish gone. "This is insane! You're making this up, you senile old fool!" she shrieked, pointing her finger at me. "You're doing this to ruin me. You're incompetent. This proves it. Andre, tell them he's lying. I just sat there. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I let her scream. I let the whole board see the rabid-cornered animal she was now that her perfect mask was gone. I let them see the truth." Heather was screaming. She was cornered, and the defiant rage was her only defense. "You're lying, you senile old fool. You're making it all up." She looked around the boardroom, her eyes wild, searching for an ally. "Andre, tell them he's lying. Tell them he's incompetent." Andre just stared, his mouth half open as if he'd been slapped. Her parents looked horrified, not at the accusations, but at their daughter's unseemly public breakdown. The board members just stared, their faces a mask of cold shock. No one was coming to save her. I just sat there, my hands resting on my cane, letting her shriek. I let the silence after her final scream stretch out, filling the room until the sound of her own ragged breathing was the only thing anyone could hear. "Are you quite finished, Mrs. Thompson?" Garrison's voice cut through the tension like a surgeon's scalpel. It was cold, precise, and held zero emotion. "Because," he said, walking slowly toward the head of the table, "corporate sabotage and financial fraud are just the first items on the agenda." Heather, who had been panting, froze. Agenda. This meeting is over. You're fired. Garrison, you're fired. I chuckled. It was a low, dry sound that surprised everyone, including myself. He can't be fired, dear. I said, my voice quiet but carrying perfectly in the dead still room. He works for me. He's my lawyer, not yours. And as he said, he is not finished. Garrison gave me a sharp nod. He turned back to Heather, his face a mask of professional indifference. Mrs. Thompson, you were very clear in your petition last week. You demanded this emergency meeting for one purpose: to transfer control of this company to, and I am quoting your own legal filing, the sole heir of the Thompson legacy. Heather tried to regain her composure. She brushed her hair back, her hands shaking with rage. Yes, she snapped. My son, Leo, Andre's son, the only heir. Now that this theatrical nonsense is over, let's get to the vote. She was still trying to bully her way through. She still thought she was in control. Precisely, Garrison said. The heir. He paused, letting the word hang in the air. The board, of course, takes the transfer of a $900 million corporation very seriously. We cannot simply assume a bloodline, Mrs. Thompson. We must practice due diligence. We must verify. I watched her face. The rage vanished. It was replaced by something new, something I had not seen on her face before. Pure, unadulterated fear. Her skin went from a flushed red to a pale, waxy gray. Verify, she whispered, her voice suddenly small. What do you mean verify? He's my son. He's Andre's son. Andre, who had been silent this whole time, finally looked up, his face a mask of confusion. Garrison, what's he talking about? A paternity test. That's insulting. Is it insulting, Mr. Thompson? Garrison asked, not even looking at him. His eyes were locked on Heather. Or is it just thorough? We simply needed to confirm the lineage, the bloodline, before signing over the entire Thompson estate. Standard legal procedure. This is illegal. Heather suddenly shrieked, lurching to her feet. This is insane. You cannot test my son, my child, without my permission. The heavy oak doors of the boardroom remained open. The sound of Heather's screaming echoed down the corridor as the police officers led her away. She was not the cool, calculating CEO in waiting anymore. She was a feral animal twisting in the officer's grip, her face purple with rage. You will regret this, you old bastard, she shrieked, her voice cracking. You think you've won. You've won nothing. You'll be alone. You'll die alone. Dr. Evans was silent. He walked between the two other officers, his head down, his entire body trembling. The $10,000 bonus was still in his jacket pocket. He was a man who had sold his soul and just had the bill come due. As they disappeared into the elevator, a new sound replaced the screaming. A flash, then another, and another. The lobby, which I could see from the boardroom, was suddenly flooded with light. Garrison had made his call. The press had arrived. I could hear the reporters shouting questions as Heather was paraded through the lobby in handcuffs. Mrs. Thompson, is it true? What about the murder? Did you kill Serena Thompson? My board members, my executives, my team were still frozen in their seats. They were pale, shocked. They had come here today to watch a confused old man retire, and they had just witnessed a public execution. They had seen a murder solved, a bloodline exposed, and a federal-level conspiracy brought to light. Mike, my CFO, was the first to move. He looked at me, his face a mixture of awe, shame, and profound respect. Zay, he whispered. My God, we had no idea. I stood tall at the head of the table. The cane was long forgotten on the floor. I was not the weak old man. I was Isaiah Thompson. I looked down the long line of their stunned faces. You are right, I said, my voice echoing in the silent, devastated room. You had no idea. You were willing to vote a man out of his own company based on rumors and a staged performance. You were willing to believe I was incompetent because it was the easier story. They all flinched. They couldn't meet my eyes. As you can see, I said, my voice like steel. My health is perfectly fine. My mind, I tapped my temple, is perfectly clear. Thompson Premier, logistics is not changing leadership. Not today, not ever. I looked at every single one of them one by one, letting my gaze linger until they squirmed. You will all return to your offices. You will speak to no one about what happened in this room. You will tell the press no comment. and you will get back to work." I paused, letting the order sink in. "This meeting is over. Get out." They scrambled. It was not a dignified exit. They grabbed their briefcases, their phones, their papers. They practically ran for the door, desperate to escape the room, desperate to escape my gaze. Within 60 seconds, the boardroom was empty, except for one. My son, Andre. He was still on the floor, curled up against the leg of the massive table. He had not moved. He was still sobbing those horrible, gut-wrenching broken sounds. He was a 42-year-old man weeping like a lost child, the son of a king reduced to a pathetic sobbing heap on the carpet. I walked over to him. I stood above him looking down. The rage was gone. The coldness was gone. All that was left was a vast empty ocean of sadness and pity. He was my son, my blood. And he was nothing. He was a hollow shell filled with another person's lies. "Dad," he whispered, his voice muffled by the carpet. "Dad, I didn't know." I sat down in the chair next to him. Not the CEO chair, just a simple chair. "You didn't know," I asked, my voice quiet. "Or you didn't want to know, Andre?" He looked up at me. His face was a wreck, snot tears, saliva. "I loved her," he choked out. "She said you were confused. She said you were hurting the company. I just wanted to protect." "To protect what?" I cut him off, my voice still quiet but hard. "To protect her, or to protect the lie that you were a strong man, the lie that you had a perfect son, the lie that you were finally going to be in charge." "No," he wailed. "Leo, my boy, my son. Oh God, is it really true, Dad? 0%. The test doesn't lie, Andre. He is not your son. He was never your son. He was her insurance policy. He was her leverage. He was the tool she used to secure my company." "But," he stammered, his mind unable to process it, "she loved me." "Did she?" I asked. "Did she love you when she was gambling away your future? Did she love you when she was meeting Dr. Evans at a cheap motel? Did she love you when she was slowly, day by day, pumping your mother full of poison?" He flinched as if I had hit him. "She wouldn't. She couldn't. Not Serena. She loved Mom. She cried. She was acting." I roared, the anger flashing back. "She was acting, and you were her gullible audience. You chose to believe the lie because it was easier, Andre. It was easier than being a man. It was easier than standing up to your wife. It was easier than protecting your own mother." I stood up, pacing. "You saw her. You saw her manipulate you, separate you from your family, turn you against me. You knew something was wrong. You knew your mother was getting sicker, not better. But you said nothing. You did nothing. You just let it happen." I stopped in front of him. "She played you, Andre. She played you for a fool. You betrayed your father. You betrayed your mother's memory. And you did it all for a woman who was cheating on you and for a child that wasn't even yours." He just sobbed, his face in his hands. "What do I do? What do I do? My life it's over. It's all gone." I reached into my suit pocket. I pulled out a single stiff business card. I looked at it. The Summit Creek Recovery Center. "Your life isn't over," I said, my voice flat. "But this version of your life is. The version where you are a weak, manipulated, frightened boy. That version ends today." I tossed the card onto the table in front of him. It slid across the polished wood and stopped right by his hand. He looked at it, his eyes blurred with tears. "Rehab," he whispered. I don't. "You are an addict," I said, my voice leaving no room for argument. "You're addicted to her. You're addicted to her approval. You're addicted to the lies she told you. You are weak, Andre. And she fed on that weakness until she destroyed you. You need to get clean. You need to find out who you are without her, without me." He stared at the card. He didn't pick it up. I turned and walked toward the door. I left my cane on the floor. I didn't need it. I paused at the doorway, my hand on the frame. I looked back at the broken man on the floor of my boardroom. "When you are ready to be a man," I said, "when you are ready to build a life on your own truth, not on someone else's lies, then you call me. But don't you dare call me a day before." I walked out. I did not look back. I closed the heavy oak door, leaving him alone in the silence with the wreckage of the life he had chosen. "We didn't need your permission, Mrs. Thompson," Garrison said, his voice flat. "We obtained a discarded plastic water bottle from his preschool playground, legally obtained from public trash. And," he glanced at Andre, "we obtained a water glass used by Mr. Andre Thompson at a lunch meeting yesterday. Both samples were legally obtained, processed by a certified lab, and the results are legally binding." This was the moment. The air in the room was so thin, so tight, I could barely breathe. Heather's parents were staring at her, their faces suddenly filled with a dawning horror. Dr. Evans at the end of the table was starting to sweat, and Andre, my son, just looked lost. "I believe," Garrison said, his voice dropping, "that this is the document you've been waiting for." He pressed the button on his remote. The slide on the massive screen changed. The casino photos, the surveillance stills, the forged invoices, they all vanished. In their place, a simple black and white document appeared. It was clinical official. It was titled in large bold letters, "Paternity Analysis Report, Case File 44B91. Below it, Subject A. Andre K. Thompson, Subject B. Leo M. Thompson. The room was so quiet I could hear the hum of the air conditioning. I could hear Heather's breathing, which had become a short, sharp, shallow gasp. I watched Andre. I watched my son's face as he read the words. He squinted. He leaned forward. He didn't understand. Garrison let the image hang there for 5 long, agonizing seconds. He wanted them to read it. He wanted them to absorb it. Then he clicked the remote one last time. A red box thick as a bloodstain appeared on the screen. It highlighted the final line of the report, the only line that mattered. It was just a few words and a number. Garrison read it aloud, his voice echoing in the chamber like a judge's sentence. "Probability of paternity, 0.0%. Andre just stared. He didn't move. His mind was trying to catch up with the words. "0," he whispered to himself. "What 0%? Heather made a sound, a strangled, desperate noise, and lunged forward. She grabbed the laptop on the table, trying to slam it shut to make the screen go dark. "No, it's a lie. It's a fake." "He faked it. That old bastard, he faked it. He's lying." 0%, Andre said again. His voice was louder now. He turned his movements stiff, robotic like a machine. He looked at his wife. His face was a terrifying blank mask of utter confusion. "Heather, what does that mean, 0%? That's a mistake, right? It's a mistake." "He's lying." "Andre," she screamed at him, her eyes wild with panic. "He's senile. We proved it. He's trying to trick you. He's trying to steal our son's inheritance. Tell them, Andre. Tell them he's lying." I spoke. My voice was not loud, but it cut through her screams like a razor. "He's not your son, Heather." Andre froze. He turned his head slowly and looked at me. I looked back at my son. "And he's not your son, Andre." And that broke him. Andre let out a sound. It was not a word, it was not a cry, it was a roar, a sound of pure primal animal agony that seemed to be ripped from his very soul. "What?" He grabbed Heather by the arms of her expensive white suit. He hauled her to her feet. "What does he mean, Heather?" He screamed, his face inches from hers. "What does 0% mean?" "Andre, stop. You're hurting me," she cried, trying to pull away. He's yours. He's yours. I swear to God, he's just trying to divide us." 0%! Andre roared, his voice cracking, his face turning a deep, dark purple. He shoved her away from him so hard she stumbled back against the table. 0% is not mine, my son, my whole. You lied to me." He turned stumbling, looking for help for an answer. He looked at the board. He looked at the shareholders. He looked at his mother-in-law, who was screaming, "Heather, what is this? Heather, what did you do?" He saw their faces. He saw the pity. He saw the disgust. He saw the shock. He turned his eyes wild and he looked at me. He saw my face, calm, sad, and certain. And in that instant, he finally knew. He knew it was the truth. The realization hit him. His wife was a liar. His child was not his. His betrayal of his father, his desecration of his mother's memory, it was all for nothing. It was all for another man's child. He couldn't take it. The last thread holding him together snapped. He didn't just sit down. He collapsed. He folded in on himself, falling heavily into his chair. He put his head down on the polished mahogany of the boardroom table. And he began to sob. It was not a quiet, dignified sound. He was wailing. Loud, ugly, gut-wrenching sobs. The sound of a man whose entire world had been detonated in front of him. The sound of a man who had lost his wife, his son, his father, and his soul all in the span of 5 minutes. The room was in absolute chaos. Heather's mother was screaming at her father, "Do something, Richard! Do something!" Her father just sat there, white as a sheet, looking like he was going to have a heart attack. And I just stood there. I watched the monster I had raised, and the fool I had raised. This was not victory. It was just the end. The boardroom was absolute chaos. Andre was wailing, not crying, wailing. A deep, guttural animal sound of a man whose entire reality had just been publicly executed. He was still slumped in his chair, his head down on the polished mahogany table, his shoulders heaving. Heather was on her feet, screaming, her face a blotchy, twisted mask of rage. "It's a lie! It's a fake! He faked it! Andre, shut up! Shut up, you weak, pathetic fool! He's lying!" Her parents in the front row were ashen-faced. Her mother was clutching her pearls, muttering, "Oh my God, Richard, what is this? What has she done?" Her father just stared, his mouth open, his smug confidence completely gone. My board members, my team were frozen. They were statues watching a dynasty burn to the ground in real time. And Dr. Evans, my wife's killer. He was trying to become invisible at the end of the table, his face slick with sweat, his eyes darting toward the exit. Amidst the screaming and the crying, I stood. I let the carved wooden cane, the one I had been leaning on, the symbol of my feigned weakness, clatter to the thick carpet. The sound was small, just a quiet thud. But it was so specific, so deliberate, that the chaos paused for a fraction of a second. Heather's screaming hitched. Andre's sobbing caught in his throat. They looked at me. I straightened my back. I felt the ache of my 69 years, but I pushed through it. The fog of the confused old man evaporated. I was no longer the frail, grieving widower. I was Isaiah Thompson. I was the man who had built this city from the back of a single rusty truck. I was the man they had forgotten. My voice when I spoke was not a whisper. It was not a plea. It was a roar. "Enough!" The word shattered the remaining noise. Everyone froze. Heather, her mouth still open, stared at me. Andre slowly, fearfully raised his head from the table. I locked my eyes on Heather. Her face was ugly with her panic. "You are right about one thing, Heather," I said. My voice echoed with a power they had not heard in a year. "You did swear. You swore to love my son." I gestured with contempt toward the weeping man at the table. "And you gave him a lie. You gave him another man's child to secure your own future." I took one step toward her. She took an involuntary step back. "But you made another vow, Heather, a more important one. You stood in my house. You looked me in the eye. You swore to me that you would care for my wife." The word wife hung in the air, heavy as a coffin lid. Heather's eyes widened. This was an attack from a new front. She did not see it coming. "What?" she stammered. "I did. I took care of her. I loved her. She was sick. Her heart was weak. Her heart..." I repeated, my voice dangerously soft. "Yes. Let's talk about her heart." I did not take my eyes off her, but I spoke to my lawyer. "Garrison, the final report, if you please." Garrison, who had been waiting by the projector like a patient executioner, nodded once. He clicked the remote. The DNA report on the screen vanished. It was replaced by a new document. The title was simple, cold, and brutal. Toxicology report, Serena M. Thompson. "What is this?" Heather's father, Richard, finally found his voice. He stood up, trying to regain some authority. "This is harassment. This is a violation of privacy. It is evidence." Garrison's voice cut through the room. "Evidence of a crime. Mrs. Thompson's blood was drawn for a standard panel 2 weeks before her death. At my request and with a court order, that sample was sent to an independent toxicology lab in Virginia." He clicked again. A single line on the report was highlighted in bright, damning red. "The findings are conclusive," Garrison announced, his voice flat. "Mrs. Thompson's system contained a substance she was never prescribed, a cardiac glycoside, digoxin." I watched Dr. Evans. He was at the end of the table. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like a corpse. He knew that word. He knew what it meant. "She wasn't on digoxin," I whispered, but everyone heard me. "Evans here. He had her on a beta blocker, an ACE inhibitor. I picked up the prescriptions myself. It was never digoxin." "She wasn't prescribed at Zay," Garrison said, his voice hard. Now look at the levels. He pointed to the number at the end of the highlighted line. The normal therapeutic level for a heart patient on digoxin is between 0.8 and 2.0 nanograms. Doctors become concerned at 2.5. Anything over 3 is considered highly toxic. Anything over 4 is a catastrophic fatal dose. He paused, letting the silence stretch. Then he delivered the kill shot. Serena Thompson's blood contained 5.2. The room tilted. Andre stared, uncomprehending. What does that mean? It means, I said, my voice rising, that it wasn't an accident. It wasn't a mistake. It was a flood. It was an execution. I looked at Dr. Evans. A fatal dose. Isn't that right, doctor? The kind of dose that would build up slowly. The kind that causes nausea, confusion, weakness. The kind that perfectly mimics the symptoms of natural heart failure in an already sick patient. Evans shot up from his chair. I deny this. This is outrageous. I had nothing to do with her medication. Of course you deny it, I roared. You were too busy meeting her, I pointed at Heather, at a cheap motel 3 days after you signed my wife's death certificate. Garrison clicked the remote. The toxicology report was gone. In its place, a high-resolution surveillance photo. Heather in her beige coat. Dr. Evans unlocking the door to room 10B. Heather's mother let out a high-pitched, strangling scream. Heather, with him, the doctor. It was over. The affair, the DNA, the murder. The room was imploding. I walked right up to Heather. She was trapped between the table and her chair, her eyes wide with animal panic. You were a cardiac nurse. I whispered, my voice low and full of venom for only her to hear. You knew the drug. You knew the dose. You knew exactly how to kill her slowly. You stood in my house. You drank my coffee. And you murdered my wife. I straightened up. I pointed my finger, the one I had pretended was trembling, right between her eyes. My hand was steady as a rock. You murdered my wife. I roared, the sound echoing off the glass walls. You poisoned her. The confession was complete. The chaos was absolute. Andre just broke. The sound he made was inhuman. He slid from his chair and collapsed onto the floor, curling into a fetal position, wailing, No, 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 she said she loved her, she said she loved her. Heather's mother fainted, slumping forward onto the table. Her father, Richard, grabbed Heather by the arm. We're leaving. We are leaving right now. He started to drag her toward the main doors. Dr. Evans bolted. He shoved a junior associate aside and made a run for the exit. They were all running. Garrison, I said, my voice perfectly calm. On it, Zay, he replied, speaking clearly into his phone. Now. Just as Heather and her father reached the boardroom doors, just as Dr. Evans put his hand on the brass handle, the doors burst open. 2 uniformed police officers stepped in, blocking the exit completely. Behind them stood 2 homicide detectives, their badges out, their faces grim. Stop right there, the lead detective commanded. Heather's father froze. Dr. Evans put his hands up, his body trembling. The lead detective walked into the room, his eyes scanning the scene. The fainted woman, the man sobbing on the floor, the stunned board members. His eyes finally landed on me. Isaiah Thompson. I am, I said. He nodded once to Garrison. Then his gaze snapped to Heather. Heather Thompson. You are under arrest for the suspected murder of Serena Thompson. He then looked at the sweating, terrified doctor. Dr. Robert Evans. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder. The officers moved in. Heather didn't fight. She didn't scream. She was in shock. All the fire, all the arrogance, all the confidence was gone. She was just empty. As they put her hands behind her back, she looked at me. Her eyes were no longer cold or triumphant. They were just blank. How? She whispered the word barely audible. How did you know? I walked over to her. I stood close enough so that only she could hear. You murdered my wife, I said. You tried to steal my company. You lied about my bloodline, but you made one fatal mistake. She stared at me, her empty eyes asking the question. You thought I was stupid, I whispered. You forgot. I am this company, and I protect what is mine. 6 months. 6 months have passed since the day I took my company back. 6 months since the day my world ended and began again, all in the same afternoon. The boardroom is clean now. The reporters are gone. The company is stable. Stronger even. My team knows exactly who is in charge. But today, I am not the CEO. I am just a man. I am standing in the quiet green of the cemetery. The morning sun is warm on my back. The air smells like fresh-cut grass and damp earth. I am standing in front of Serena's grave. The marble is smooth and cool under my hand. Serena M. Thompson. Beloved wife, adored mother. 1956 to 2025. I brought a single red rose, her favorite. I carefully place it on the stone, my fingers brushing the engraved letters of her name. It is a ritual I have kept every week. But this week is different. I am not alone. I am holding a small, warm hand. Leo's hand. He is 5 years old. He is innocent. He is the only piece of this whole wretched mess that came out clean. The courts granted me full custody last month. He is my grandson. Not by blood, perhaps, but by love. By duty. He is a Thompson now. That is all that matters. He does not understand where his mother is. He does not ask about Andre. He just knows he is safe with me. That is enough. Heather is in a cell. She is awaiting trial. The evidence Garrison and I gathered was overwhelming. The toxicology report, the DNA test, the casino debts, the surveillance photos of her and Dr. Evans, the attempted corporate fraud. The district attorney called it a slam dunk. She is facing life in prison with no possibility of parole. Her parents, the smug, arrogant couple from the boardroom, did not post her bail. They have not returned my calls. And Andre, my son, my poor, broken, foolish son. He is in rehab, at the Summit Creek Recovery Center, the card I gave him. He sat in that empty boardroom for 3 hours after I left. Then he made the call. He is fighting. He is trying. The doctors say he was completely codependent, addicted to Heather's approval, terrified of her anger. He is trying to learn how to be a man. I do not know if he will succeed, but he is trying. I look down at the cold marble. I kept my promise, Serena, I whisper. The words are carried away by the breeze. I kept my promise. I know you suspected her. In your last days, you tried to warn me, and I was too busy grieving to listen. I'm sorry for that, but you were right. You were right about all of it. I squeeze Leo's small hand. Maul. He looks up at me, his eyes wide and curious, not understanding who I am talking to. It's done now, my love, I say to the stone. She can't hurt us anymore. She can't hurt your company. She can't hurt your son. I sigh a long, heavy breath that feels like it has been trapped in my chest for a year. Now you can rest. You can finally rest in peace. I look down at Leo. He smiles up at me. It is a real smile, a child's smile. Your son and I whisper, my voice thick. We have a long road, but we're going to try and heal. We're going to try and fix what's broken, starting right now. What happened to my family is a terrible lesson. It teaches us that the worst betrayals often come from those we love the most. My son and daughter-in-law looked at me and saw a broken, senile old man. They saw weakness. They forgot that the man they saw grieving was the same man who built an empire from nothing. They underestimated my strength, and they underestimated my love for Serena. Never mistake quiet grief for weakness. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one holding all the cards. I shared my story, a story of betrayal and the fight for justice. Now I want to hear yours. Have you ever been underestimated by your own family? Have you ever had to fight back against those who thought you were weak or finished? Tell me your story in the comments below. I read every one. If my story resonated with you, please show your support by liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more real-life stories. We are a community of survivors, and your voice matters. Thank you for listening.